Hello and welcome to Phenomenal Science, the journey of a researcher within Phenomics Australia, a podcast brought to you by one of Australia's top research infrastructure providers. Here at Phenomics Australia, we support researchers to discover the genetic drivers of human disease and enable high-impact healthcare outcomes in precision medicine. Through our nodes across Australia, we offer specialised infrastructure, research services and technical expertise dedicated to advancing our fundamental understanding of health and disease. I am your host, Bridget, and I am currently studying cell and molecular biology and science communication. I have always been fascinated with genetics and how our lifestyles and environment shape us into who we are today. The interactions between our genes and our environment are what we focus on at Phenomics Australia to develop precise disease modelling tailored to individuals rather than a one-shoe-fits-all model. It is important that we communicate the discoveries and the impact of research to those outside the science community and educate and inform society on what we do. Phenomics Australia supports and guides researchers to pursue their passions. We do this in many ways that we will discover as we follow the journey of researchers who are a part of our network and use our expertise to conduct groundbreaking research into precise medicine. Today I am joined by Ms. Tina Cardamone, the manager of our histopathology node at the University of Melbourne. This node provides systematic necropsy and histopathology services to biomedical researchers for the evaluation and phenotyping of modified, treated, or genetically engineered mice at all developmental stages. With her background in diagnostic anatomical pathology and mouse pathobiology, Tina provides mouse phenotyping expertise to enhance biomedical research outcomes. As a service manager, she also works closely with students and researchers to guide their journey and inspire them to consider histopathology. This position requires a high level of technical expertise and the ability to coordinate a number of teams. Without people like Tina, Phenomics Australia would be unable to provide world-class infrastructure and expertise for precision medicine research. So Tina, can you tell me a little bit about your position as a service manager?
Hi Bridget, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So I started with Phenomics Australia in 2008 and it was just emerging at the time, so it hadn't been set up. So I was brought on as a project manager. And at the time, the head of the node here at the University of Melbourne, Professor John Finesse, sat me down and said, this is our vision, this is what we want to create, and basically gave me guidance, and we were able to project manage and establish the histopathology service at Phenomics Australia. To my knowledge at the time, there was nothing really like this particular service in Australia offering histopathology to Australian researchers to better characterise their strains and either their treated mice or their genetically engineered mice. So we looked to what had already been set up in Europe and in America and in Canada. And these guys had set up years before we started. And they had some great setups. So it was based on their processes. So we were able to set down standards of how to receive the animals, how to perform the necropsies, the best way to perform and characterise an animal or a mutant to best identify any sort of real mutations. And we'll probably go into that a little bit later on. And we were able to set up a laboratory information management system, which basically is a database for text so we can enter pathology, mouse pathology. We were able to bring on board some expert pathologists, medical and veterinary pathologists to help us, because it's not just the technical side of things. The most valuable part is the actual mouse pathology that we generate. And we had great support from the histology facility here, because one thing I want to make clear is We are not histology. A lot of people think we are histology. We're not. We're histopathology. They're two very different disciplines. So we were able to sort of start the process and get all the necessary processes in place to start receiving some animals from researchers. At the time, people weren't aware that we existed. So again, we had to reach out, and it was mainly not through websites or any sort of marketing at the time, because we weren't doing any marketing. It was word of mouth. So we started with a few groups, and then word spread. And you can see by our numbers over the years since 2008, I mean, we're basically at capacity now. We have risen astronomically. So it's been basically word of mouth, and it's been a great success in my opinion.
Definitely looking at how pathology was one of our first nodes. Back then to now, we have at least 6 different expertise and many, many, many more centres around Australia. So how, as a service manager, what made you want to assist researchers and support students in a service capacity?
So I really appreciated the idea of having a service which basically allows biomedical research right across Australia to better understand disease processes and help them develop new therapeutics and strategies for disease prevention. And we realise we get researchers from right across Australia in different areas working on different disease models, but understanding their strain, the model that they're working with, and characterising that properly was very important so that there are no mistakes or misinterpretations made to better understand their mouse model. So by knocking in or treating or knocking out genetically modifying, thinking that this particular modification might generate a model of a human disease may not necessarily be the way it goes. So to understand and characterize the entire animal, thinking that perhaps if a researcher modifies a particular gene, they're expecting a certain outcome, and that may not be the case because mice, even though they're 99% homologous to us, they're different. So the idea of providing an expertise service like this to researchers, and I saw, how amazing it was for researchers to get that information, and we put it in such a format where they're able to understand it and then apply it. They may not like the results. The results may not be what they were expecting, but then it gives them a lot more information and data to proceed with their research, whatever direction it may take from that point on. And the idea of helping researchers and helping also their students to better understand the histopathology of the tissue that they're dealing with, for me, is very satisfying.
So to be able to provide that level of expertise, if a researcher comes to you with a question or comes to you with an idea of, okay, this is what I want my research to look like, you're able to give them that expertise of being like, actually, this may work this way, it may not work this way, because you have that really technical, high-level knowledge. Able to provide that level of expertise. Do you find that's really rewarding to be able to see a researcher who has really benefited from your assistance and your guidance at the end of their journey?
Yeah, we don't often get, look, it's not a bad thing. We don't often get feedback saying how wonderful, this bit of information is. It takes us into a new direction. But that's not a bad thing. And what is great, what the feedback that we get is the fact that they come back with another cohort or another modification and they want the service again, or that we get a phone call saying, so-and-so from this lab recommended your services. That for us is wonderful. Having people just word of mouth talking about the service and the benefits that it has provided to them is wonderful to hear. And as I said, what's happening is it's just quietly word of mouth, and a repeat request is a wonderful thing. That's all we can ask for, really. And also when they publish and they acknowledge us, that is also wonderful to see.
So really you have quite an established, very successful service that you can provide to your users. What are your strengths as your node and what sets you apart in the pathology and the histopathology world? Do we have any other histopathology centres like this in Australia? You were saying we were one.
To my understanding, not to this level. So what we do is we receive a cohort of animals, or we could receive fixed tissue, or we receive referred slides, for example, from CSL, where we perform scoring of the tissue and then a pathology narrative. So we provide very niche service to Australian researchers. But not only that, we have pathologists that have strengths. For example, Dr. John Finney, one of our veterinary pathologists, great in neuropathology, great in embryology. He said at the beginning of the podcast that we look at animals from right across all developmental ages. So we look at, from embryos from E12 right through to neonates, and of course, mid-range adults and aged cohorts as well. The great thing is that we have a group of pathologists that are willing to work with us and with the researchers to provide the data and the histopathology for the researchers to then take back and use it for whatever purposes and direct their research. But another great thing that we offer, not only our wonderful pathologists and the staff here who have got extensive mouse pathobiology, histology skills, microscopy skills, technical skills when it comes to handling and harvesting organs. It's tricky because you want to harvest all the organs quickly, because as soon as the animal is euthanized, you have autolysis, and autolysis is artifact, and artifact is a big no for histopathology. So quickly harvest, prevent any mechanical damage, embed and present the tissue in such a way in order to visualize all the structures. If you're going to comment on the heart, we need to see the valves, we need to see the muscle, we need to see all aspects of the heart. You're going to comment on the lungs, you need to make sure that you see all areas of the lung and all other features like the trachea and all associated tissues. So we have all the staff and all the expertise, but we also not only hand over a pathology report to the researcher, we also give them access to their digital images, to all the barcodes that are linked to the digital images. So when we're talking about a particular pathology of the uterus or the ovaries or anything like that, there is a barcode there where they can say, okay, this is what they're talking about. This is what the pathologist is referring to. I'm going to go now onto the slide center, which is our slide manager. It's an online slide manager where the researcher can log on. They're given a username and password. It's secure, and they can access. Normally, it's under the principal investigator, head of the lab, and they can access all the projects that we have produced for them and every single image.
Yeah, so making it super accessible to researchers.
So they can read the report, they can view the images, and it's basically like Google Earth. You zoom around, you don't need a microscope. And it's excellent quality and the resolution. And then they can take more images if they want to publish. We annotate a lot of those images to assist them. Sometimes it might be a little tricky. And again, this is where our expertise comes in, and we're able to. A lot of the time I'll get a phone call or an email, can you please show me what you're talking about here exactly? So I'll go in and annotate and make it a lot easier for them to identify what is in the pathology report.
So I guess that means as a service manager, you're not just what people would think as a manager, as administrative, you're also...
I'm not just operational. No. It's a lot more than that. I wear a number of hats. So I kind of am the go-between the researcher and the pathologist. I manage staff here, making sure that the quality work is what is expected. I'm the accountant. I'm sometimes the engineer when we have problems with our equipment. Administrator. I wear multiple hats, and I love that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. I love that. It can be challenging. But I also, my passion is the greatest. I think I feel the most giddy and happy when I've got a project and there's nothing else. I don't have to worry about admin, accounting, staff, anything like that. And I can just sit down and review a case and prepare it for our pathologist. That gives me the greatest. In the morning when I think that's all I have to do today, just sit down and review a case and look at pathology, I'm ecstatic. It's a great day. And I also find it joyful when I've generated a report. So what we do is we generate a preliminary report. So there's no point in giving hundreds and hundreds of slides to our pathologists to look at normal lung and normal liver, right? We all know what that looks like here in this service. What we do is when there's a question mark, we red flag it. And that's what we forward on. So a selection of slides for our pathologists to look at, including all neuropathology, of course. So I prepare the preliminary report. We gather all the slides, or we make all the slides available to our pathologists, and then the pathologist will come back with a narrative commentary on all the issues that I've brought up, all the red flags. And then having that discussion with them, discussing, well, hang on a minute, we're seeing this, what does this really mean? Is this significant? And having that discussion with the pathologist so that we can generate the final report. It's brilliant. I love it.
So really guiding researchers to collaborate with your pathologists as well. So how is it different to academic or just a straight novel research career pathway in science? To get to your level of technical expertise, what did that look like for you? What's the blend in your position between academia and research?
So one thing with researchers, and I touched on this earlier, they are focused on a particular part of research. So it's their research. So it might be brain, it might be lung. And what we do on this side is we have to really get our head around the pathology and the different types of diseases right across the board. So one minute I'm dealing with acute lung injury. The next minute I'm dealing with virology, neuropathology. You've got to be able to understand, not to a minute detail, but understand diseases right across the board and ensure that you do your research before you undertake a project, and talk with the researcher to understand what they want, what their expectations are. And then the trick is to be able to mediate to ensure that the results that we generate can be understood and processed and ingested by the researcher. The part that I play is to make sure that I have a good understanding of both sides, because I'll get questions from the pathologist and I'll also get questions at the end from the researcher. I'll ask a question about the report, and it's up to me to make sure that I'm clear about from both sides to be able to answer any outstanding questions. So I guess my feet are in both camps. It has to be. I need to understand the researcher, and I also have to be technically aware of what we're doing on the histopathology and the hands-on lab work here in order to achieve results that are, that can be used, that are beneficial, that will make a difference.
And then also coordinate large teams and make sure your infrastructure is up to date and everything as well as the service manager.
Oh, yes, IT and infrastructure, absolutely. And equipment ages, people rely on us. So, the slide scanners, the instruments that we use to generate the digital images, we need to ensure that they're serviced and they're up and running. We can't turn around and say, oh, sorry, we can't provide you the digital images. Our scanner's broken. And that's where I feel very lucky that we're always supported funding-wise to ensure that we can replace or add to our equipment and our infrastructure. And we're also supported by the University of Melbourne when it comes to IT to ensure that we have a lot of storage for all our data. We've created about 120 terabytes of data over the years. We need to make sure that that's protected and that's managed, and the university supports us in that. And I got to a quota recently, and I said, guys, we need a lot more space, and they gave me 100 terabytes. Easy done. So we've got great IT support here as well. But again, I've got to get my head around the IT. I wasn't trained in IT, but a lot of this work that we do is IT-based. The technology. So that's another fun thing.
Yeah, so it sounds like a very, very complex position to have, a very complex job to have that also sounds really rewarding. So
it's the best, yeah.
So with such a complex position that you're now in, what did your career pathway look like? Because you're not in what someone would call a typical academic or a typical novel research position. So if someone else wanted to do something very similar, if they're like, I don't know exactly what I want to do, I don't necessarily want to be like a lecturer or a teacher, but I don't necessarily want to go into like 100% research. What did your career pathway look like to get to this sort of specialist position?
Yeah. I describe what we do here because in a previous life I was pure diagnostic, medical diagnostic. So I describe what we do here as kind of diagnostic because I've implemented diagnostic processes. We have to, trackability, all that, standardized processes, but research as well. So it's the best of both worlds. I had the diagnostic skills which were necessary to start this particular service. And having a good science background and having the diagnostic skills, I think, is essential for what we do because it kind of is like diagnostic. If you've ever worked in a diagnostic lab, it's the same kind of processes, but you're doing it for research work. So what I found is I kind of, this thing evolved for me. I didn't start up saying, wake up one morning saying, this is what I want to do. I want to be a service manager for, this particular unique niche area. But one thing I will say that I think really illustrates what this particular type of work does or is. I have a senior scientist, Ira Nuglet, excellent scientist. She did a degree in science here at the University of Melbourne, and when she finished with honours, and when she finished, she was a little lost. She didn't want to go into research. She wasn't sure whether she wanted to do diagnostics, but she went ahead and she did a pathology course at RMIT, diagnostic pathology, looking at hematology, biochemistry, histology, but for diagnostic purposes to work in a diagnostic lab. So she did that for a year. And then part of that course was to do a work placement for a few weeks. And so I work closely with RMIT to take on students for work placements, just for about 8 weeks, 8-week period. And I find they're great because they're hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this work is hands-on, and a lot of this work is follow the process. It has to be followed exactly in order to achieve the quality of work that we're after. It can't be sloppy. You can't then go back and repeat. It has to be done properly. And I find the students from RMIT were good at that. So I thought, well, this is twofold. I get an extra pair of hands, which I was desperate for. And secondly, I get to train them and show them because succession planning, I'm always thinking for the future. I need people and I need good people. I need to handpick them. So I've been taking on work placement students for many, many years. Anyway, so Ira took on, or she came in for an interview. I thought, oh, this person's quite bright. I think I might take her on for work placement. And then when she was shown and saw what we did, she took it to like a duck to water. She loved it. She loved that whole two-camp thing where we have the research, but we have the diagnostics. She loved it. And she thrived and she took it on quickly. And I hardly had to train her. She just sort of kind of evolved very quickly into the role. And she's excellent at it. And sometimes I think she's a lot better than me, quite frankly. So she's excellent. And this is another important thing that, keeps me up at night because we put in so much work. And I'd like to retire at some point. I'm not going to be, and passing on it. You can't open a textbook and read about what we do.
Yeah.
We've got the practices down. It's so niche. It's so unique. So having people being trained and being able to train them and show them, and for me is satisfying, and also I feel at peace because I think we've got people coming through the ranks that will take over and continue the service and build on the service because they're appropriate and they're being skilled and trained. And I'm loath to lose any of them because there's been a lot of work and a lot of training on my part and their part to make sure that they are the right people for this service. So it's been good. I've been fortunate because I've found some little diamonds in the rough. And at the moment, I've got a couple of juniors that we're training up. So I think we've got a good team. I think we'll have a good team. When I move on, because eventually I'll go, I think the service is in good hands.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like you have a wonderful team and a wonderful service to be working with. So
Yeah.
being a part of Phenomics Australia and being one of the only places that provide histopathology, what has been the difference of becoming part of Phenomics Australia with the Uni of Melbourne?
Yeah, well, if it wasn't for Phenomics Australia, I don't think this service would exist. So it's a wonderful thing that services like this and other nodes provide to Australian researchers. And the fact that we're based at different research institutes means that we get the benefit of that particular institute, the university or medical research institute or the WEHI, for example, Melbourne Uni, they have the infrastructure, they have the support, they give me the room, they give me the lab, it's all in kind. And so it's a wonderful combination of the two. You have the international, the national services, Phenomics Australia, and then you have the different platforms and institutes that allow that work. And being at the University of Melbourne is wonderful. It's a renowned place, and when you have researchers from around Australia, they know the university. This is a great service based at a great university. I think the idea of having Phenomics Australia and then bringing in the various universities and institutes is brilliant, great, and it's working.
Thank you so much for talking with me today, Tina. I just have one last question to end it on a high note. You've talked so much about your love for working with researchers. So what would you say is your most rewarding thing that you do in your job? What do you find the most satisfying in your role?
I guess the most satisfying for me, there's two things that I really get joy from. One is when I see something unique in the pathology, in the histopathology, so a micromorphological pathology or change that I wasn't expecting, I get extremely excited. And, most people outside this realm would scratch their heads and think, yes, so. But for me, sometimes I sort of jump off my chair and say, look at this. And I'll call everybody in. Have a look at this. Can you believe this? It's amazing. So I love that when I see something unexpected in the project that I'm currently working on. Not my research, it's other people's research, seeing something that the researcher didn't expect and we didn't expect. So a unique pathology, and that gives me great joy. But it also what else gives me great joy is when I see my staff. I want to arm them with as much information and I want them to have the same passion as I do. I take the time and the training and the patience to show them things. And sometimes I think I might be too intense with them sometimes, but I want them to love it. I want them to understand it. So sometimes it might be a little bit overwhelming to them, but then I'll go back and I'll say, let's review this again. What did you understand? What do you want me to clarify? Because understand people learn at different rates, and maybe they may not keep up with what I'm saying at the time because I'm excited about it. But when they get it and when they show me something that they have identified and I see, oh, it's clicking, they're getting it, it's great. Some of the processes they might even find a better way of doing it and they'll come to me and they'll kind of a little bit sheepish about, what if we do it this way? It might be a better process. And that gives me untold joy because I'm thinking, yes, that sounds great. Let's change the process, implement your idea because it means that the outcome is better, and that's great. So yeah, when I see my staff taking the reins and just leading a little bit, or understanding or developing their skills, and maybe doing it a little bit independently, that gives me great joy. I'm thinking, yep, we're in good hands. Everybody knows what they're doing. It's great. And, because
Well, it sounds like your
you want to,
team is also in
yeah.
great hands as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, we've been doing it for a few years now, over 10 years, and we take a lot of pride in the service we provide. I see how it can benefit researchers. I mean, there are times where I might even do something a little bit outside our service where a researcher or the student might be struggling harvesting a particular, they might be looking at salivary glands, for example, in the mouth, or the gut, and they're having difficulty harvesting that tissue because they make a mess of it. But I'll bring them in and I'll say, look, let's work together. I will show you how to do it. And, we don't charge, I'll show you how to do it so that you can go back to your lab and you can implement that particular skill and not make a mess of the work and maintain the integrity of the tissue so that your research benefits. So teaching just technical skills to researchers, I'm happy to do that. In my opinion, I think it's a great service and I think it's in great hands and I think it has a long-term future. It has to because it's the only, in my opinion, I think it's the only service of this kind to this level in Australia. And it's nice to have a service in Australia that is of equal quality to the ones overseas. We're up there with the States and Toronto and the services over in Europe, I think anyway.
To provide very high quality work at the same standard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's clear that you very much love your job as our service manager, and that you clearly have a lot of enthusiasm for your work and be able to provide a service to others. Yeah.
Thank you, Bridget. That's great. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us the service manager point of view. That is a very, very wonderful insight into what a pathway different to academia or novel research could be and how complex and how valuable our staff like you are. Like we wouldn't be able to provide the service and the level of expertise that we do without people like you.